Hello everyone and welcome to Zoom O'Clock with your host Tessy Antony de Nassau. I'm today here with a very special guest and very good friend and fellow sorority sister, Leonor Stjepic. Hi Leonor, how are you?
Hi Tessy, hi, how are you? You're looking great.
Thank you, same. Where are you? It looks amazing where you are. The walls like greenish and everything, really
Well,
cool.
this is my cabin in the woods in Croatia. I'm in the middle of the countryside. I've been here since October because I can't quite yet get back to London, but I'm enjoying being surrounded by nature, which, as you know, is very Montessori.
Very, very nice. And that will be all we're going to talk about today. Before we dive into the topic, I will introduce you very briefly, just so that our listeners and also the individuals seeing this video on YouTube understand how fabulous you really are, dear Leonor. So an award-winning international executive, Leonor Stjepic is an influential driving force in global education, delivering positive social impact around the world. As chief executive of the Montessori Group and sought-after innovator, Leonor establishes versatile education solutions in partnership with international authorities, private corporations, and NGOs. Among others, Leonor has received numerous awards around the globe for her incredible and inspiring work in education. Leonor, it is an absolute honor to have you here. I know how busy you are. You're always, even with Corona, you are always on Zoom, you're always on conferences. There's always something going on. I think it's so inspiring. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. And it's really because the subject matter and education is so important that I'm driven to really talk about it as much as possible, because we really do need to change how education is seen and how we do education in the future. So it's a pleasure to be able to be given the opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the topic straight away, because as you know, Zoom O'Clock time is limited. So Montessori, everyone has heard it, but not many people actually know what is it really about, other than it's not as traditional as a traditional system that we know. And also a lot of people don't know about the accreditation, about Montessori itself. I will not say too much because I want you to explain it all to us. Leonor, the stage is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. So you're quite right. People have a lot of views about Montessori, and one of the problems that we face is that because Montessori isn't trademarked, because Maria Montessori did not trademark her approach, anyone can set up a school and call it a Montessori school, or anyone can claim to be Montessori. And that's why one of the pieces of work that we're doing is this accreditation. So we relaunched it in March of this year and renamed it as the STAR Accreditation, because we thought that was an easier name. So anyone any parent looking for any Montessori school, and of course Montessori does go up to 18, it's not just nursery schools, can now look for that STAR logo. And in fact, on our website, montessori-group.com, we have a list of accredited schools. And it's really important because it's about the quality. And what we're saying is what the STAR accreditation shows is that this is a school, an institution that is committed to providing the best quality education for its children, its students. And so we would encourage anyone looking for Montessori or a Montessori approach to education to look at that STAR or look on our website. So Montessori is again something that's not very well known. People have a perception that it's all about the classroom and the beautiful materials, and Montessori does have beautiful materials in its classroom, but we believe it's an approach that you can do Montessori anywhere. For example, we've just done a project with street children in Pakistan where there are no schools, where there are no materials. We believe it's about how you work with the children, the approach of the teacher to the child. Teachers are seen as guides. We're there to what we call follow the child. So children have an innate curiosity about life. Anyone that has a baby or has had babies knows that children want to touch everything and put it in their mouths. And that's how they make sense of the world around them. That's how they learn. Children learn through doing things, through touch, through all of the senses. So it's a very sensorial way of learning. It's a way of learning through activity. Children can choose the activity they do, but we have a framework. So children are encouraged to do everything, but they're allowed to take things at their own pace. And that's really important. Because if, for example, if you're teaching maths, and you have a maths problem, one child may pick that up in 5 minutes and then is bored for the rest of the lesson because they've understood, they've solved the problem. Another child may need, an hour or 2 hours to resolve that problem. And if you cut that short, what it does is it gives that child a sense of, oh, it can't do maths, or it's a failure. And that's not true. It just needs more time to process because it needs the way of working in a different way. So that's really sort of very much about allow a child to carry out activities at its own pace, choose what it wants to do, but be supported and guided by the teachers and the framework of Montessori. Hopefully that gives a bit of a sense of Montessori.
Well, both my children have been Montessori educated as well. And at the time, there didn't exist yet the Montessori that goes beyond the preschool, kindergarten, and even some primary school education. Now it really goes up, including high school, which I think is really fantastic because we have specialized medicine, right? So why not have specialized education as well, so that no child is left behind or no child falls for the grid? Because I think, as you rightfully said, some children need more time. My children are very dyslexic. The Montessori system helped them really very much also to enjoy reading because they were given the time. In the normal system at the time, they would have not liked it because they were just not fast enough. And that would have really created extreme frustrations. And what I liked as well is that Gabriel, as you know, because we have worked with each other many, many times, Leonor, and Gabriel as well has come to your events and has even spoken at your events about, the importance of how the Montessori education as well gives this extra outside classroom skills, such as the garden, Absolutely. Which helps with mental health. Gabriel is a very big advocate on mental health. And I think his love to find that channel of release through gardening has come because of Montessori. And thus I'm very, very grateful for that. So moving on then, well, firstly, the STAR accreditation was your idea, dear Leonor. You were really the driving force behind it, which I think is fabulous because both of us have visited Montessori schools where we knew they were not accredited. And remember, I don't know if you remember, I'm not going to say which country it was, but there was one Montessori school where they were not very happy to see us because they just wanted to run away the school as they wanted it. And it was absolutely not the style of Maria Montessori. And so I think it's really, really important to do that also with the way the classroom is set up and everything. I totally agree. Then you have done something else very specifically as well that I'm very fond of and I'm very proud of to know that you have been doing that. In the first time in history, you have created an alliance, a global alliance for Montessori. Tell us about that.
Yes, I think it's really important that we are all Maria Montessori talked about, teaching children that they're part of the world around them. They're part of something bigger. And that touches on the nature piece and the gardening, which is why we have outdoor and indoor classrooms and support children in learning about the world around them, and why we have a partnership with the Jane Goodall Institute, for example, about their education program. Yes, we believe that Montessori should be for everybody. And so we're working at the moment across 70 countries. We're working with organizations across the world. We're constantly looking for collaborative partnerships with both institutions, whether they be universities, where they can train teachers and we can help them, we can train them to become trainers, through to nursery schools or schools, but also sort of larger organizations. We're talking to global organizations about, and global charities now, about how can we add value and how can we support the embedding of those principles, because it's really about this social and emotional skills that children need to learn. As you say, it's really good for their mental health, but also those are the skills we're going to need in the future. We're not going to need the skills of just absorbing facts. We're going to need the skills of understanding about facts and critical thinking. We need our children to collaborate and be creative because of the challenges that we're facing in the world. These are going to be the leaders of the future, and they're going to have big challenges around climate change, around, you know, the after effects of the pandemic, that we don't know how long this could last, around, you know, some of the conflicts that are happening. I was reading horrible statistic the other day that 100 civilians die every day from conflicts around the world. You know, we need to build that kind of socially responsible leadership, and we do that through education of our young people. So for us, that's those global alliances, that global way of working is really important, because we can't shut ourselves off in little boxes and say, no, you know, that's not us, this is us. So yeah.
Exactly. No, and I like that you're so open-minded, yet there's a serious thought behind how it will look and what the framework is. Because a lot of people say as well, that was one of the comments I often got, well, how will your child cope, even for the high school part, right? If they're Montessori educated, because they're never going to be able to cope with the demands of a normal traditional system of education. Because they can just flowy around, go around the classroom. And I said, no, I said, it's actually quite structured, right?
It is, yeah. And we follow curriculum. So we can, because it's an approach, you can put it into any culture, any curriculum, and it's about how you do things rather than what you learn necessarily. And actually, you know, there are longitudinal studies in the US that show that children, particularly children from disadvantaged backgrounds, actually they close the achievement gap if they're put through the Montessori system. So Montessori supports that empowerment of children to become better at learning and become more skilled and actually succeed. And so a lot of the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are ex-Montessorians and say that Montessori gave them their, you know, the basis for their success. It's a very powerful way of teaching children that can be used anywhere. And we think every child deserves an opportunity to be taught in that way.
Absolutely. Moving over to the little bit of the bigger people, us, right? There's two things I'm also very fond of. One is that you create these teacher training, these programs where mothers can, or mothers or young women can become educated. There's also fathers, of course, but it is sadly still mostly female students that take on that offer. But, you know, for the men listening to this, we need you as well. And it's a really great profession for men as well, to really empower women, right? To give them a chance to create an own Montessori school, and you help them build these even, right? With also helping them with microfinancing and everything, the education, everything they need, kind of like the whole business plan and everything. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, Maria Montessori was a very big believer in female empowerment. I mean, she spoke at the first Women's Congress for women in 1896, talking for equal pay for equal work, even back then. And so we build on that legacy.
We're still not there.
Still not there. It's very depressing, very depressing. But yeah, but we do believe in that kind of looking at how can we empower women, and how can we empower women to be entrepreneurs. So that goes from, but we give scholarships and bursaries to women who want to go and study for Montessori education. We've moved away from having everybody needing to come to London to study, to starting to build training hubs around the world to make it more accessible, because often if you've got, you know, family to look after, you can't necessarily spend time traveling somewhere else or being away from home. We are supporting, you know, even in the accreditation scheme, we have a mentoring program. So anybody that wants to set up a nursery and start right from the start of wanting to be an accredited nursery, we have mentors that support them through that process. We offer, in some cases, we'll offer free courses or subsidized courses for staff for CPD. And we've even this year had the International Montessori Awards that gives a cash prize for people who are, excellent in practice across a whole range of things, including support staff. So, the caretakers and the cooks and the cleaners and the people who actually also go towards, making a sort of a school or a nursery what it is, often are women and are not actually necessarily celebrated, but their roles are, their caring roles are still incredibly important. So it's about supporting that entrepreneurship is absolutely vital for us. And as you say, also encouraging men and younger people. We need to see young people see it. And part of that is getting some of the influencing work we're doing about getting the status of people that work with children seen as a profession, not as a job. It is a profession. One of our, which I've not had a chance to even tell you about, Tessy, is that one of the things we want to do is actually look at home educators. How can we encourage home educators to join our accreditation scheme, so that even if you're a home educator, you can have something that say, look, this is my badge of recognition that I do something that's of quality, even though it may be, and we tend to not use childminder, we want to use home educator because, that is around, educating children. It's not about babysitting. It is actually a profession and we should recognize it as such.
100%. I agree. I totally agree, because I remember I had, when I lived in London more full time and the kids were smaller and I was working and studying and all that stuff at the same time, I had also someone helping me with the children sometimes. And she was, Jodie, she was fantastic. And she would really take the time also to do the homework with the kids and so on. And she was extremely, extremely qualified. I'm sure that a lot of young people specifically, it would just, as you say, it would give them more credit to what they already do, which is incredible, the work they're doing, raising our little children when we are working and doing
and particularly young mothers, where they may have their own child and they may not be able to go and work in a nursery or a school, but can have other children come to their house. Well, that's valuable work, and it is, and it is educational. They're educating other people's children who have to go out to work somewhere else. And it is an important part of that community. It is about that, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it often takes a community to raise a child. It shouldn't just be on the mother, and the father themselves, and particularly on the mother. It should be, we should recognize that it does take a community.
100%. There's another thing which I find really, really, really interesting, which I would like to tap in a little bit, is that Montessori education is not just for children and not just for high school students and not just for educators and not just for empowering women, but also it is really, really good for individuals, for example, being attained from Alzheimer and other illnesses. Tell us a bit about that, because that is something, when I learned that while working with you, that was just mind-blowing, because that no one knows about that.
Yeah. Well, it's true. And there's been pilot projects around the world, particularly in Australia and in the US, that show that if you train the carers of people with Alzheimer's, with dementia, to use the Montessori approach, you can actually, I think in some places, it reduced the use of medication by 75%. And it reduced the incidences of wandering. So often, I looked after family members with Alzheimer's. They will wander off, because they're not aware of where they are or what's going on. But actually, if you give them something and you engage them and you use exactly the same approach as you would do, in the Montessori approach in schools, there's just a higher incidence of people being happy, fulfilled, having purpose, and it's just a great thing to do. So this is something we're really, really interested in. We're also interested in looking at people with special needs, you know, and obviously, and we're looking at a project with an organisation that works with young adults with special needs. Again, about using the Montessori approach. There's a possibility of using Montessori for good mental health with people that have PTSD, for example. And again, it's about that routine, that sense of achievement, that kind of, you know, creating you know, we say, you know, sometimes when you're doing a piece of work, you're in the zone, and you are, it's that, and that's very much what Montessori does. It's sort of, you're in that moment of that activity, and it just gives you a huge sense of satisfaction and peace to be doing something. And Tessy, you may remember this, that when you went to the school in Norfolk to film, when we did the Chelsea Flower Show.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but there was a little, and this is, to me, this is a perfect example. There was a little girl who was really engaged in an activity, and we had, you know, cameraman around and photographers, but she was just very calm, not sort of upset, just very focused on her activity with all this stuff going on around her. But you can imagine that for someone who's an adult who may, you know, be in that situation of feeling anxious, to be able to be in that sort of zone of peace and quiet and focus, it's got to be really good for their mental well-being.
For sure. I can also imagine, listening to what you're saying, that for autistic children and adults probably will also be a good idea, and many course. But it is definitely a field that is quite unexplored, and a lot of people don't know about it. So it's great that we have touched on it a little bit. If you have some links, please share them with me and I will put them on.
We will.
Video.
And what we will also, sorry to interrupt, but what we're also going to do is, through the International Montessori Institute that we created last year, we're actually going to be doing research into this. And we've launched 2 research funds, and one is actually a European research fund, which is €90,000 over 3 years. And we're really interested to look at those sorts of things. Where can Montessori be applied elsewhere to really make a powerful social impact? So yes. Oh, definitely happy to share those links.
Please do. Also, for people listening to this who have children, children going into Montessori, who want to become a Montessori teacher, want to open their schools, or have someone with dementia or Alzheimer, or even think that this is just incredible, didn't know about all of that new research coming up, just get in touch with Leonor and her team, and she will make sure you are well taken care of. So our time has run out. It's so amazing to talk to you, Leonor. Before I let you go, tell me, there's always one question I ask everyone, which is about, you know, we're living in turbulent times, but there's so much innovation, and there's so many things that inspire us daily and create that innovation in ourselves as well. You know, during the COVID pandemic, you have innovated quite dramatically as well, right? With the Montessori school, and personally, and everything is just fantastic. What is one book you have read where you were like, wow, that book really made a difference?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a really difficult, that's such a difficult question. That is such a difficult question. One book that I read. Actually, it's a book that I read many years ago. And it's actually by it's the Black Swan. I don't know if you've yes. So it's about how, you know, it's unpredictability, and I think it's Naeem Taleb, I think, that wrote it, and it just made me start to think. When it first came out, I read it, and it made me start to think, actually, we can't take life for granted, because sometimes something will happen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, it's how you handle that unexpected sort of that black swan, how you deal with that is actually what is going to make a difference, not sort of worrying about, oh my goodness, this is happening, now what? It's okay, this is happening, so what can I do about it, or where's the opportunity around this? So I guess that would be the one.
Very interesting and very
difficult question. Very difficult question.
Yeah, very difficult. I know, I get them all with that question. Well, thank you so much, dear Leonor. I make sure the YouTube video will go up live today already. then all of the others will go up in the next few days. And I make sure that below each and every one of the videos or podcasts, there's all of the information of you, of your website that you have mentioned, and anything else you would like to share. So yeah, this is it for us today. Thank you so much, Leonor.
Thank you. Thank you. Too short a time to speak to you.
Always too short, my darling. We speak offline. And then for everyone listening here, please subscribe to the channel, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all of the other podcast channels. Please share, comment, rate. It's so important. We have also created a patronage for the podcast to make it more reliable and more that I can have it more and more guests, more time for it. So please look into it on my website as well, tessydenassau.com. On all of these things, your support is greatly appreciated. And if it is just your comment on what you think about the podcast or the YouTube videos. So thank you so much, Leonor. I wish you a beautiful rest of the day, and
you too.
We keep talking offline.
We will. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.